All right, Shalom Aleichem Rabotai. Welcome to our Wednesday class on Yalkut Yosef. Last week we were talking about the halachot of Havdalah. It was our second class. We finished with Havdalah, but before we jump in to what else happens on Motzei Shabbat, we'll just answer the question that I think Farbaz asked us last week regarding what if there is one candle? Can someone do an Havdalah with one candle? So I looked it up, and the Rabbanim say that it's not me'akev, which means ideally we want to have two candles, or at least two flames, right, coming out, two wicks, because of the bracha. The bracha says bore me'orei ha'esh. Me'orei is plural. But if we don't have plural, don't give up on the me'orei ha'esh. He says it's not me'akev. It's not like it's going to hold you back. I'm not going to do the bracha if there's only one. So even if you have one, you should definitely do the bracha. Right, that's that.
One more question. What about if there is no besamim?
And
I mean, we can do in a cologne. We can do in cologne.
yes, first
We
of all,
can.
you can do on a cologne. You can do on cologne. You can do in rose water. If you're Persian, you must have rose
No,
water.
no.
Some
Let's say we are traveling, we are abroad, and there is no. So we can basically smell someone and say besamim on the cologne.
smell someone. I don't know about
But
smelling someone. That's a good question. But if you have the cologne itself, you can say baracha. Rabbi Ovadia says even if it's artificial, even if it has nothing real like a plant or something in it, you can say baracha on something artificial. Better if it has a real source, like it comes from a flower or something like that, like rose water. But even if not, you could make a beracha on it.
okay.
Definitely, you cannot say a beracha on a woman's cologne. That's a different problem. Just so you know for next time. I'm
Well,
talking
even
when
if
it's
it's a
on her.
husband,
Yeah, when
even
it's
if a
on her.
husband, even husband and wife.
It's not the right way to make a beracha, you know. All right. So now Motzei Shabbat. We finished Havdalah, and the next obligation that we have on Motzei Shabbat is called Seudah Revi'it. Now, what is Seudah Revi'it? Okay, translates to the fourth meal. Right? We had a meal Friday night, we had a meal Shabbat morning, and then we had a Seudah Shlishit. What is this fourth meal? What is the source? Where did it come from? So I heard a beautiful perush by the Shivilei Pinchas, Sarah Friedman, and he says like this. He says that David HaMelech, the Gemara says he asked the Kadosh Baruch Hu, tell me Ad 120 when he would pass away. He wanted to know how long is he going to live. The Pasuk says, Hodi'eni Hashem, kitzi umidat yamai maihi. Hashem, tell me the end of my life. What is the deadline? And Hashem says, sorry, we don't deliver that kind of information. So he says, at least tell me how many years. Hashem says, even that I'm not going to tell you. David concludes and says, well, Hashem, at least tell me on what day am I going to pass away? And that Hashem was willing to answer. Hashem said, Shabbat. Right? So now what happens every Shabbat? David HaMelech knew that as long as someone is learning Torah, he has a protection that he will never die. Meaning, as he is verbalizing the Torah, it's some sort of Haganah. The Gemara says a similar story about Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, that as he was very sick and he was about to die, everybody was, praying and learning for him and just wouldn't pass away until his servant saw that he's suffering so much. So she dropped something. And whenever she dropped it, for 1 second, they stopped learning to see what happened. And in that second, he passed away. So that's the idea, right? So the Gemara says something similar with David HaMelech. David HaMelech was learning the whole entire Shabbat. And until one time, as he's learning, he heard an ilan. He heard the tree outside making a strange noise. So he went outside and he stopped his learning to see what was that. And because he stopped that learning and see, I guess he fell down, whatever it is, and he passed away on that moment, on that Shabbat. That's how David passed away. There's a whole beautiful perush on what does it mean that he saw an ilan, a tree. So the Chachamim, Rav Friedman himself says that really this whole Gemara is referring to what happened in Gan Eden. It says in Gan Eden, the Midrash says that when Adam HaRishon was created, Hashem showed him all the neshamot that are going to be in the Jewish people. And when he reached to the neshama of David HaMelech, Adam HaRishon saw that he had no life to him. So he says, why does he have no life? Can I give him some of my life? We learned this once in the past. Adam HaRishon gave him 70 years of his life. But either way, he had no life. But since Adam HaRishon sinned in Gan Eden, there became a concept of Mavet. There originally was not supposed to be any Mavet, any death in the world. Hashem says, if you eat from the forbidden tree, Bayom ha'u, mot temutun, you will die. We here understand from here that if Adam HaRishon did not eat from the forbidden fruit, no one would die. So the tree is what brought death to life. And therefore, the Perush that says that David HaMelech heard a tree outside and he went out to see what that tree is, it's really, the deeper interpretation is that it's referring to the tree of Gan Eden. The tree of Gan Eden brought death to life. And how many years? So David in Gan Eden got 70 years from Adam HaRishon. Now that 70 years exactly finished, we know David HaMelech was born on the day of Shavuot and passed away on Shavuot. 70 years exactly. It happened to also be Shabbat. And that's it. So when you hear the Ilan, it's really referring to time to die, time to die. So that's another pirush. But either way, since David HaMelech knew that he's supposed to pass away on Shabbat, as Hashem told him, every Shabbat David would study as much as he can, not let go of the learning. And every Motzei Shabbat, once Shabbat was over, it's already Sunday. Even though it's night, it's already Sunday. So Hashem said he's going to die on Shabbat. He didn't die. He has another week to live. Because he understood, now I have one more week to live, he made a party. What was the party? Seudah Revi'it, a meal to honor one more week of life for David HaMelech. That's one of the Pirushim. Another Pirush will basically say, we are accompanying the Shabbat as the Shabbat was with us for 24 or 5 hours, and it was so good to us. We felt our neshama in a different level. You know, they say when someone tries to learn something and it's not, he's not getting it, and daf gemara, whatever it is, leave it, go back on Shabbat. Rav Meir Eliyahu says, it's tested. Go back on Shabbat, learn it again. All of a sudden, you have mochin, you have a different understanding on Shabbat. What happens? The neshama gets an elevation. So now the neshama left us. Okay, with the Shabbat that is leaving us, we are accompanying out with a meal, with a Seudah Revi'it. So now let's see what are the obligations of this Seudah Revi'it. Says the halacha in Siman Shin. Shin is 300. The 300 halacha. Siman. Nachon lelavot et Shabbat bekazait pat. It is good, it is right to accompany the Shabbat with a kazait pat. Have 1 ounce of pat, bread, do amotzi, amtilat yadayim, v'berkat hamazon. And he says why? He says because there's a body part, there's ever ushmon naschoi. There's a body part that's called a naschoi, it's also luz. And he says the only pleasure that this naschoi, this bone, ever receives is the pleasure of Seudah Revi'it. Nothing else feeds this bone, right? It also is called a tzimaluz. And why is this bone only able to enjoy Seudah Revi'it? Because it's the one bone that did not enjoy the forbidden fruit in Gan Eden. The whole body was enjoying the fruit. It went through the mouth and all the body parts enjoyed it. Chachamim say this bone did not enjoy it. Why? Because it's created in a way that it can only enjoy food of Motzei Shabbat. So since the forbidden fruit was eaten on Friday in Gan Eden, this bone never sinned. Since it never sinned, then this is the bone that's going to revive us in Tchiyat HaMetim. So a person is completely dead. There's one single bone that even if you don't see it, it's there. And from that, the Tchiyat HaMetim will come. I don't say, how could it be? It looks deteriorated. It looks like nothing is left from it. How does a tree grow? This is the proof of Chachamim. You take the pit of the fruit, it gets deteriorated, you throw it into the ground, all of a sudden a tree comes out. That's what's happening with the Ben Adam. Only with us, it's not a matter of a month or two. It's a matter of how many years Hashem decides until Tchiyat HaMetim. Hopefully we'll all live till the time of Mashiach, Hashem, but that's the idea. So he says, ideally you should have bread. Is it an obligation? We'll see soon. Now, the Zohar Kadosh says something very interesting. And now the Yalkut Yosef is usually pshat. It doesn't bring so much Zohar, but he brings this beautiful Zohar. And the Zohar says that when your neshama comes back to Shamayim, they ask the neshama, ma'achat. It's referring to the neshama yetera, the additional neshama that you received on Shabbat and is leaving you on Motzei Shabbat. It is asked in Shamayim, what have you eaten? What divrei Torah have you heard? So here we see that the neshama, or at least this part of the only thing that it can enjoy is the divrei Torah, is the food of Seudah Revi'it. That was just a side note on the idea of neshama yetera. All right. So is the bread an obligation, or is the bread not an obligation? Answer is no. You do not have to eat bread. In fact, we saw that the Shulchan Aruch says that even Seudah Shelishit, you should eat bread, but if you can't, you don't have to. So Kol Sheken Seudah Revi'it, it's not an obligation, but me'od kedai. It is very kedai if you can to have a small piece of bread. You don't have to fill yourself up. But kazait, 1 ounce, everybody can do that. You gain so many brachot. Netilat yadayim, hamotzi, berkat hamazon, the only bracha that we have from the Torah, according to certain opinions. Right? If you cannot do it on bread, do it on cakes. And if you cannot do it on cake, even do it on a fruit. Any fruit, just as long as there is an ounce in there and is worthy of beracha chona, you say Borei Revi'it on the apple, eat half an apple, say Borei Nefashot, have in mind this is Seudah Revi'it, boom, you're Mekayem the mitzvah of Seudah Revi'it. And I'm telling you firsthand that I've seen people take the Seudah Revi'it upon themselves and wonders happen in their life. I'm talking firsthand, very, very close to me, not a story I heard. It's a big thing. It's a big zchut to do Seudah Revi'it. If you can do it with bread, ideally. If not, anyway, you're eating on Motzei Shabbat. You don't have to eat a big meal. You're eating half an apple, a date, something. Have in mind this Seudah Revi'it. Hashem, I'm honoring the Shabbat that is leading us right now. You're mekayem this mitzvah, and you're giving life to the bone that is supposed to revive us in Tchiyat HaMetim. What is the time to have this Seudah called Seudah Revi'it? Says the halacha lekatchila before chatzot. Ideally before midnight. As we've learned many times, midnight doesn't mean 12 o'clock. It may be 12, it may be 12:30, it may be 11:30. It's chatzot. Whenever chatzot hits, ideally you should have it until then. But if not, until dawn, until the morning, you're still able to eat Seudah Revi'it. Now, what happens if you are savea? You're so full, you had such a huge Seudah Shelishi, and you don't even have the room for that ounce of not even bread, a fruit you cannot have. Do you have to push it in or no? Achaz says, some say you should eat, because how much really is an ounce going to affect you? But halacha lema'aseh says Yalkut Yosef, you're patur. Because the Shabbat is there, a Shabbat nitna le'oneg, v'karata la-Shabbat, oneg. What are you going to put yourself in a situation that doesn't give you pleasure just to honor the Shabbat? Halacha lema'aseh, you don't have to. But some say you should, and either way, be smart. You know you're going to be that full. Leave a drop of space for that little ounce so that you could be mekayem the mitzvah of Seudah Revi'it. Are women obligated in this mitzvah, or only men? Your wife is on a diet. Motzei Shabbat, she says, no, I'm intermittent fasting right now. I'm not eating till tomorrow, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Listen, honey, Seudah Revi'it, women are obligated just like men are obligated. Why? We know that Seudah Revi'it is dependent on time. When is it done? Every Motzei Shabbat. Are women obligated in mitzvot that are dependent on time? The answer is no. Just like they're exempt from Sukkah, it's dependent on time. Lulav. So how can we say that a woman is obligated to do Seudah Revi'it? Who knows the answer? So let me ask you another question, and from this question you'll get the answer. Shabbat is also a mitzvah dependent on time, once a week. So how is it that women are obligated to keep Shabbat? The answer is that women are exempt from mitzvot aseh, from do, you have to do, right? But mitzvot lo ta'aseh, they're not exempt, they have to keep. So a lady cannot turn on a fire, because katuv lo telaru esh bechol mashvotechem. And Chachamim learned that since a woman is already obligated with the mitzvot lo ta'aseh of Shabbat, then even the mitzvot aseh of Shabbat, even though they're dependent on time, they're only once a week, she has to do them. According to this token, Seudah Revi'it, even though it's on Motzei Shabbat, we hold that it's part of the mitzvot of Shabbat. And since it's part of the mitzvot of Shabbat that a woman is already obligated because of the lo ta'aseh of Shabbat, and she cannot turn on a fire, etc., then she is obligated as well, just like Avdalah. Ashkenazim don't hold like that. Ashkenazim hold that a woman, there's a safek if she has to do Avdalah or not. Therefore, she should never say the beracha on Avdalah on her own. If she doesn't have a husband, or she's somewhere that she has to go to her neighbor to hear them say that. She cannot say it herself. Shema, she's not obligated on this mitzvah, and she's saying b'chal v'tala. For the Sephardim, we don't hold like that. Avdalah, Seudah Revi'it, these are all parts of the mitzvot of Shabbat, and therefore the ladies will be obligated as well. So once you take this with you to eat something in honor of Seudah Revi'it, tell your wife also, honey, here's a half an apple. Here's something, have in mind for Seudah Revi'it. Makes a lot of noise in Shamayim. It's really kedai. What should we eat? So the halacha says that it's good to eat something new, meaning not just leftovers of Shabbat, something new, right? So again, if you don't have the space and you're just eating something small and it's half a fruit, no one's going to run after you. But this is just, if you're asking what the ideal is, if you are eating bread, what should be in that meal? Something new, not just Shabbat leftovers, he says, something exciting that you long to eat, that you get excited about. If you can, that would be great. And on the same note, he also says, regarding the clothing that you wear, better to have that Seudah Revi'it with the clothing that you wear on Shabbat. Why? Because we just explained that this whole Seudah Revi'it mitzvah is part of the mitzvot of Shabbat. So if you're changing your clothing, you're showing that you left Shabbat. I don't want to leave Shabbat. I'm accompanying the Shabbat, and therefore So sometimes you want to go out, you want to do something and say, I eat Seudah Revit over there, I'm going to go eat pizza with friends, whatever it is. Okay, you want to change a little bit, maybe leave something of Shabbat, leave the shirt, leave the pants. So you could say, I'm still holding a little bit of the Shabbat during Seudah Revit. Again, these are non-obligations. Nothing is obligation from what we said, except for eating something. Eating something is the obligation in honor of Seudah Revit.
Ziv, I have a question. I heard a Rabbi Mansur speech live one time actually, and he was talking about Seudah Revi'i, and he related it to the lose somehow.
Right.
Is it strengthen the lose or something? I think he was saying something
So we spoke about
about
that.
the.
Etzem aluz is this bone over here in the back of the neck. It's called also naschoi, and this is the bone that did not sin in Chet Adam Arishon, because Hashem created this bone that only thing that feeds this bone is food that is eaten on Motzei Shabbat. And therefore it didn't die in Tchiat HaMetim, it didn't deteriorate completely like the rest of the body, because the rest of the body enjoyed the forbidden food. This bone stays even after someone passes away, and therefore it has the power to revive us ad navesim. So some call it etzem aluz, some call it naschoi. I think there's another name, ben betuel, something like that. It has a few names. Each one has its own reasons, but the idea is the same. This food on Seudah Revit gives kochot to Tchiat HaMetim, so it's recommended. And I forgot to mention regarding women, we said that it's not only an obligation for the women as well, but it's also a segula leleida kala, a segula to have an easy birth, says the rabbi. So if one of us has a girl that's about to give birth, Be'ezrat Hashem, in the right time, and no, come have a segula, Seudah Revit, it's very good. All right. So that was Siman Shin, Seudah Revit. We're done with Seudah Revit. And now we are going to dive to I think, a topic that is relevant to all you fit people here in this chat, and it's the topic of working out on Shabbat. Can we run? Can we work out? Can we swim? We're going to spend a few minutes on this, Be'ezrat Hashem. So regarding running, don't jump to conclusions. We'll take this step by step. But generally, we are not supposed to run on Shabbat. Why? Because the pasuk says, "V'chibadto," and you should honor it, the Shabbat, me'asod derachecha, from the ways of your natural, your drachim, your ways, right? Meaning you have a normal way that you're always rushing during the week. You're going here, you're going there. On Shabbat, you have to honor it by the way you walk. So you have to walk in a different way, a way that has nachat, that shows that you are relaxed, you understand in what day you are in right now. However, if it gives you pleasure to run, you are the type of person that if you don't run every morning 25 miles, your mind is not wired, right? You know those guys? For them, they're allowed to run. We're not going to say they're not honoring the Shabbat. This is honoring the Shabbat for them. Without that, they're not going to be themselves. Then, since it pleasures them, we allow them, right? He just comments that if you are running 25 miles, make sure not to leave the Iruv of the city, because you may be carrying something that's a different. When we get to carrying, we'll talk about that as well. What about exercising, not just running? Lifting weights, doing push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, all of that. Squats, huh? What do you say, Simon? Can we or can we not?
I mean, I would say it's not in the spirit of Shabbat, I guess. So I would say the
Okay,
answer is no.
so first of all, that could be
Hold on. But if it gives you pleasure, if it gives you pleasure,
Oh, Steve
there
says
you
it
go.
gives you pleasure. Chazak Baruch. So halacha says like this. When we spoke about running, we did bring that thing of if it gives you pleasure. But the pleasure wasn't that I'm becoming more fit right now. We weren't talking about pleasure like that. We were talking about my soul is not relaxed without running. Some people need that. But when it comes to lifting weights, doing push-ups, I don't know how many people in the world say, instead of eating ice cream right now, imagine the ice cream was imaginary ice cream with no calories or a burger, whatever you desire. I want to do push-ups. It gives me, I find it hard to believe that the push-ups themselves give you the pleasure. The result of the push-up may give you a pleasure. But either way, he says that working out amongst those matters is asur. But why? He says because generally the reason people work out is to sweat. Right? Now we'll explain in a minute why can't we sweat on Shabbat. But since your intention is to sweat, it is forbidden. What's wrong with sweating? So today, we sweat all the time. But in the past, the action of sweating was an action of healing. When someone was not feeling well, they would heat them up so that they would sweat it out and feel much better. And there's truth to that, obviously, until today. And so So what? So I'm sweating. So I'm healing from sweating. What's wrong with that? There's a gzera. There's a decree of Chachamim that we have a fear that if we allow you to heal yourself through anything, through sweating, then you may come lishchok samemanim. Lishchok samemanim means to come and to cut off the herbs, like the Rambam says that all the herbs have the ability to heal different things. You would cut herbs on Shabbat and make a potion. And cutting is a isur de oraita, right, of the kotzer. And therefore, since we don't allow that, we are not going to allow you to do anything that heals you. Because once you feel like, oh, I'm allowed to get healed by sweating or whatever it is, I can also go cut those leaves off and make myself a potion. It may seem far, but this is the halacha. And you will see a lot of restrictions on people that they cannot do gzera shchikat samemanim. Anything that heals you. So the main one that we all know, is sweating. Okay? So sweating, someone works out, he wants to sweat.
Ziv, you can also sweat when you run. In fact, you might sweat, some might argue you might sweat more when you run than the other forms.
That's why you're right that running seems like an exception. Generally, you're not supposed to run. We spoke specifically about that person that if he doesn't run, his mind is not wired. It's a mental thing that he needs for himself. Don't ask me, what if I find a man that mentally cannot start his day without lifting dumbbells? I've never heard of that man. I don't know. Maybe Yalkut Yosef doesn't bring him. Good question. But the idea we understood. Running is an exception. If it's there.
Ziv, I also have a question about sweating. Shouldn't it also be asur? Because, I mean, you're not supposed to shower afterwards, and you don't want to make it uncomfortable and shul for people next to you.
Okay, let's say you prayed early mincha, and you're planning on going to late Arvit, and you're running now, and on Motzei Shabbat.
Oh, you're saying like afterwards. Okay, I got
There's a loophole. You could find something that, yeah, of course, you're not supposed to shower with hot water. You can shower with cold water, by the way. So if you're up for that, then you're okay anyway.
You can dry yourself?
Drying yourself, you have to be careful not to squeeze the water out of your hair. Drying your body is easy. Don't ask me what happens if you're Persian. There may be some hair over there as well. We all have those issues, but the restriction is on the hair. If you dry your hair, then you may be squeezing out, or your beard, right? So that's, Ben Ish Chai says, you're allowed to just put the towel on your head. Leave it, let it do its own. But your body, you can dry. So no, there's not a problem to shower. Now you're saying there's a problem for squeezing. Of course, there's endless problems, but I'm saying if you just look at the action of showering, you can solve that by showering with cold water. You're worried about squeezing, just leave the towel on you. Every step that we take, we can find a solution. But regarding just, lifting weights, as we were mentioning before, there's a gzera mishum refuah. There's also something similar when it comes to massage. If someone is massaging me on Shabbat for my pleasure, it's mutar. I'm being massaged because it gives me joy. A lot of people, they enjoy the massage. But if you're someone that worked out and strained the muscle, something like that, and now it's almost like medicine for you. Someone that's a professional is coming and make it so you're healing from this. Is if the purpose is healing, it's done. Allah says, don't do it strong. If you do it strong, it's for healing you, then it's a problem. Just like sweating was forbidden because maybe you'll come to cut off leaves to make a potion to heal yourself. The same gezerah applies with strong massage that is healing you. Again, if it's for pleasure, it's allowed. That's going to be the distinction. Is it pleasurable, or is there an element of healing? Swimming on Shabbat. So this can also come to the topic that Simon brought regarding a shower. But let's say we're breaking it down to just swimming on Shabbat. Is there a problem with swimming? We may have mentioned this once in the past, but it's definitely worth mentioning once again. In the ocean, there are a few problems, not just one. One of the problems is that there's a decree that if you come to swim in an ocean that is open space, as opposed to a pool that has like kind of a rim around it, then you may come to build a raft on Shabbat in order to swim, in order to get to somewhere, right? So it's a decree, but still, it's forbidden. Shema ivne rav Seudah, lashut. You may build a raft. Or another decree that I wouldn't normally think about, but the ocean is already outside of the iruv. And if you're splashing water in the pool over 4 amot, right, then you're moving the water from one location to the other that is outside of the iruv. It's as if you're carrying. Okay, that sounds far, but either way, the ocean is very problematic. But what happens with a pool? So with a pool, since it has a rim around it, there's no fear that I'm going to build a raft. I know where it begins, where it ends, then the decree doesn't hold over there. Right? So what issues can I have with a pool on Shabbat? And I'm not talking about not being in the spirit of Shabbat. Because that's not halakha, that's spirit. We'll get to that. But there's one fear of squeezing. You're wearing a bathing suit and you may come to squeeze it, or the towel later on, and you may come to squeeze. But let's solve that problem. If I'm aware of the halakha, and with the towel I won't squeeze, I'll just put it on my head. Or my bathing suit, I'll make sure not to take it out and not to squeeze it and not to get drops on. He says if you wear a synthetic bathing suit, then there is no squeezing in something that's synthetic because it doesn't really absorb any of the water. It's not real fabric that the water went in. It's artificial. With synthetic clothing, there is no squeezing, he says. Okay, that's one issue that we solved. All right? Sorry, you wanted to say something? Okay, so also there's a fear of kibus. If I'm wearing, let's say, a bathing suit that has a little stain on it, and now I'm going into the pool, then I'm mechabes. I'm laundering the clothing. I'm making that stain go away through the water. That's also a problem. So let's say I have a clean bathing suit that is synthetic in a pool that has a rim around it. All these things will allow me to dip into the pool. We're not talking about swimming right now. We're talking about dipping into the pool. However, says Yalkut Yosef, this is a story that happened to him while he was in Deal for, I guess, for a weekend. And on the way to shul, he was contemplating in his mind, what should I write in the Yalkut Yosef? Is it allowed to go into the pool on Shabbat? It seems like I solved all the problems, just like we mentioned right here. How could I say that it is forbidden? He says, I didn't know what to do. Hashem sent me an answer, Mishamayim. I heard the men walking, I don't remember if it was before or after him, saying one to the other, I'm so upset that my son did not come to shul this Shabbat with me because he wanted to be in our pool. Now he's in the pool instead of coming to Bet Knesset. Says the Yalkut Yosef, I understood from this, it was a sign to write that you shouldn't go into the pool on Shabbat. Not because the dry halakha says it's forbidden, but maybe as Simon said before, it's not in the spirit of Shabbat. It may keep people, forgetting what is right and what is wrong. So halakha lema'aseh, we cannot say that it's asur min adin, but we teach our loved ones not to go into the pool on Shabbat. Definitely not with a cotton bathing suit that has a stain on it in a pool that doesn't have a rim on it. Okay, I went to the extreme. All right, we have 2 more minutes, so let's get one more halakha in there regarding tiltul b'Shabbat. Right? There is a machloket if today carrying is going to be a isur deoraita or isur derabanan. I'm talking about reshut harabim, meaning we're not sure what reshut harabim. But let's remind you what tiltul is. Tiltul is carrying something from one premises, from my own premises, my private property, into the public, right? I left my house. Today we have an iruv, so we rely on the iruv. But how did that happen? Because really, the real halachic requirement in order to turn a city into one entity is to put a wall around it, like Yericho in the time of Yoshua bin Nun, a real wall. So why do we rely on the iruv? The answer is, since today there's a machloket regarding if it's the Shechut HaRabim is deoraita or it's only the Rabbanan, because some say in order to be a real Reshut HaRabim, a real property of the main, it has to be something so big like when they were walking in the desert. That was the real Reshut HaRabim, where you don't see the end and you don't have any turns right or left. But today in public, every second you turn right or left, you see the next block. So it's a little bit different. That's why some hold that even Reshut HaRabim today is only Reshut HaRabim the Rabbanan. It's only from Chachamim. It's not from the Torah. And since it's from Chachamim, we rely on the iruv that is made from a string. It says, if you can be machmir, tavo alecha beracha. Good for you if you want to be strict. But really, we rely on that string because we hold that the Reshut HaRabim that is before us is Reshut HaRabim only from Chachamim, and that's why the string is sufficient. All right. We'll stay over here, Rabotai. Skula mitzvot. Zaku baruch.
Thank you.
Baruch. Thank you, Ziv.
Thank you, Ziv. Thank you.